This is basically Mission Credit Part 2.
Yeah.
Where are we at, Sam?
Good question, Olivia. We're at the Jim Henson's Creature Shop Photo Gallery, and it's on tested.com by Norman Chan.
That stuff is amazing. It was
So detailed.
I love stuff like that. There's so much, a lot of the articles about like stop motion, I think some of the most interesting for me.
Yeah.
Like this kind of thing where like creature shops like this, like where they make all of these things, it blows my mind that people do this.
They're so
And that they're so detailed and so incredible.
Yeah, there are so many times when I'm watching movies when I'm like, that must be CGI, and then I see like pictures like these, and I realize that they like use it to like aid in the effects, but like the main bodies and stuff are just
A lot of CGI is just like taking a video of a person and then the green screen ends up being something else that is also like made.
exactly.
And I think that a lot of the time, like I see movies and like sometimes like Maleficent, okay, it was all CG effects, and
it was all computer generated.
It looks too slick, you know? Yeah, it's a little bit too much. Like somehow it's like you can tell that it's computer generated.
Yeah.
Like
As far as we've come, it still looks computer generated.
yeah, everything you can still tell. And I think some of the most valuable effects that I think are the most incredible are the things that people have actually made.
It's more
It's
impressive.
like if you watch Lord of the Rings, all the armor is real, okay? All of the armor is real, and it looks so much better that way. Which is why I love this. Okay, we're not gonna play that. They made like 7,000 square feet of email.
yeah.
Now it's a nature.
I know. Did you guys ever see the movie Labyrinth?
No.
Been meaning to for
Play the game.
No. Well, it's a kid's movie. It's about a girl who goes into this magical world in order to find her baby brother, and there's goblins. The Goblin King is played by David Bowie. It's a great movie.
It's on Netflix, actually.
Yeah, it is on Netflix.
So it's
Thanks for mentioning that. I watched it the other day. Yeah. But I think a lot of the creatures are kind of in this style. They're so detailed, and they've got that groundness and realness to them that you just don't get in special effects movies today.
Also, something that was like really cool is in Interstellar, Tars and Case were like real, like person operated, like constructed puppets, and they had like hydraulic systems because they got so heavy and being made out of the materials they were. And like, of course, in some scenes they had to do CGI, like when they like tumble and roll and like extend little arms and stuff. But for the most part, like it also just like makes it feel like more of like a real person.
Yeah,
like
it also gives the
the
actors.
shots didn't make it, but like the interactivity that has, and like the obstacles that all like the operators can go through, like they had them like go through like little portals and stuff. Like it was just so cool, and it just added so much more to the movie.
Yeah, also gives the actors like an actual visual of what it's gonna look like. There's so many CG ones, like in Merlin, the TV show. The first time he did the dragon scene, it was just him standing in a room with like a little tennis ball that was like the dragon's head. So he had absolutely no idea what it looked like, no idea like how to react, like how big it was gonna be, or anything. I feel like it makes it so much harder for the actors to like know.
Yeah, I think that's the case with a lot of TV today. Because like acting has gone in this whole other direction. Like you have to have this whole other set of skills, which is being able to act like with nothing. I mean, one of the greatest things also back to Lord of the Rings is one of my favorite movies ever. Gollum and Andy Serkis was just supposed to be the voice of Gollum, and then because they noticed that he was like really acting when he was doing the voice, they put him in a suit and like he was Gollum.
And they actually
made it so much better because the actors could interact with him. He could actually do things like
The fight scenes weren't
just like
it was like actually
it was
fighting.
like he was actually there. You can really tell in the movies that like he is a real character in this movie. But in that case, like he was still CGI, but he was really based on.
They did make lots of small models of what he was
Yeah, they had tons of models. Like it was him in a bodysuit, really. But it was so great. Yeah, you can really tell. I don't know why. I don't know how
The article alluded, where the slideshow alluded to a video that they made, and I watched that video too. And it wasn't anyone in MythBusters, but it was a guy that was affiliated with it because that's what the website is. And they were showing you all the different things that they were doing in that shop as well, just making like the exterior of the puppets. And it was like really cool, the type of technology and CG that goes into making the puppets, and then you have like all this stuff that you're using to control the puppets, and all these things that, as you were saying, like overlap onto the puppets to make it really real. And then there's one contraption that was like your hands in the puppet, but it was just controlling an on-screen thing. So instead of like having to type computer programs to make the CG thing work like you want it to, you can actually physically control it and act, but what you're acting just shows up on screen.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I also think I think a really cool thing about puppetry is something I think you were saying before about human beings really know if something they're looking at is real or not.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and it kind of freaks us out when it's not. Like they look weird and alien. So do you guys see like the Curious Case of Benjamin Button? Okay. So it came out a few years ago. It was Brad Pitt is playing this guy who aged backwards. So when he was born, he was but in the movie, there was this whole thing because they needed to computer generate this 6-year-old old man, and it was so difficult for them to try and create this. They completely had to computer generate this face because it was entirely different. But in order to make something that didn't look like a weird computer generated zombie, it looked real, which is something that CGI is getting better at, but it isn't something you can ever really get. Like the real human tangibleness of puppets.
Next one.
Right, so the next article we're talking about is mental illness or mental health issues affect 20% of showbiz professionals, and this was mentioned by thestage.com, and I'm not sure who the author is because the article went away, but maybe you'll
Matthew Henley.
Matthew Henley, great.
This article, like, it didn't really
Yeah, it wasn't really.
but it was kind of, it was still kind of shocking.
It's depressing that was like, you knew what it was going to be, but it was depressing that actually was interesting.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, haha, we're all so messed up. But,
no, it was like everyone in the
Yeah. I mean, I am mildly surprised that it is just the theater industry, not just like art in general, because
I mean, I feel like
the
it's
general
not
name.
art.
What?
Never mind. She said 2 bases.
The thing about art and specifically theater, I guess there's a difference between theater and art. I'll talk about it in a second. But like the reason I thought it would be art as a whole is because art is something that is so criticized and everyone has a different opinion on, which was a big part of why people are like stressed out and people have these mental illnesses or mental weaknesses. So, I mean, but the difference between theater art and just general art is theater art, you perform it, and as you're performing it, as you're doing it, there are people right there watching. Like, give immediate feedback and, like, applaud if you do well.
Or
Don't applaud if you don't do well. Tell their friends, don't tell their friends.
Don't laugh.
Yeah, exactly. And, like, yes, being backstage, that doesn't affect us as personally, but, like, it still does. It still is, like, an immediate response. Not even just applauding, but just in general, like, theater is, like, interactive more than a painting on a wall. Painting on a wall, someone could have painted that, like, 500 years ago and is long dead, or even someone that's still alive but's, like, halfway around the world. Someone sees it, turns to their friend and says, you know, I don't really like this. That doesn't have the same effect on artists as it on a visual artist as it might if someone's in the theater, turns to their friend and say, I don't really like this, as they're watching the show.
And they say it really loudly.
Also,
I don't like this!
Also, there's huge publicity over, like, theater critics and stuff. Like, everyone gets published, so you kind of, like, can't even avoid it.
Yeah.
There are more movie stars than painting stars.
Yeah. Also, like, when you're painting, you're usually alone in your house. You're, like, in your studio painting. And when you do the whole piece, it's all by yourself and, like, alone with no audience. And then you show it to people.
And not only that, like, not only are you working with others or, like, immediate reactions with others, it's a really high stress situation. You're putting yourself in 18 hours a day. Like, it's long hours, it's stressful hours, especially as a performer or, like, someone who's running a show. That's a lot of time and a lot of preparation, and if the audience reaction is bad, it's like it has a much higher pressure on you to perform well. And I feel like that after years and years will wear down really fast.
Yeah.
Like I had this theater teacher who always said that actors and artists are always really vulnerable people because acting is about being private in public. And that applies more to acting than to design or really any other part of the theater. But people who are drawn to the theater do tend to be like kind of wear their hearts on their sleeves a little bit. Like kind of do need to have your emotions be readily available.
Mhm.
And you know, as unfortunate as it is, that kind of person does tend to have like perhaps like a more internal pressures on themselves.
And like for us, yeah, we put like our feelings into our work, but like the actors, at least, like they were talking about how some exercises they have to do are like to really make them very emotional. Like the goal is to make them emotional. So people are like put in this scenario where, yeah, they're forced to really be open and emotional and really take what everyone says to heart. And so if there's a critic or someone that's not just someone that even for some reason just doesn't say like, oh, that was a really great job, and just doesn't say anything, like that can really affect someone.
Yeah, you have to put your soul into something. And
Yeah.
people don't like that. I feel like that could just hurt you a lot more
Yeah.
than say like you're an accountant and someone didn't like.
You messed up on the numbers, like, oh.
It's like, okay, that's just my work. Like, you know, like maybe they don't like my work, but at least it's just, my work and myself are separate. But I feel like for artists, the line is blurred.
It's very invested.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The next article is The Midnight Rider, hearing set on filmmakers' appeal of OSHA violations. It's by Ted Johnson, and it's from Variety. And it basically discusses the train crash article that was earlier on in the blog, and it talks about like the fines and the incident.
I just think this was stupid. Like it's not like it's some independent film that like no one's ever gonna see. And that like had a $500 budget. Like this is a feature film. Like this is a big deal. Like they could have waited a week if they wanted to, or something to get the papers, or even they probably had enough money to recreate that exact location, like in the sound studio. But they had to like risk everyone who was there's life to do that. And granted, they probably didn't think they were risking anyone's life. I hope they didn't know or think that it was like a real
They
accident.
claim that they took reasonable steps to ensure the safety of all crew present on site for filming at the incident location.
You're being persecuted for what's it called, willful neglect.
Yeah.
So maybe they didn't know, but they're being persecuted for knowing that it wasn't totally safe.
Yeah, and they also knew that they weren't allowed to, because then they like sent an email to the guy or like talked to the person who was the head of it, and he was like, "No, you can't film that day."
Well, they were waiting on paperwork to get the train tracks actually closed down, and then they figured, oh, we'll be fine. We know when the train comes, and some schedule had changed that obviously they didn't get notified about because they weren't cleared to be there.
You don't know trains.
Also, like the fact that trains can't stop as fast. Like there was a video of the incident from the front of the train, which was just like completely jarring. And like the guy, he couldn't stop the train fast enough, so he was just yanking on the horn to try to get them out of the way, but they couldn't move fast enough.
And also,
it was really scary.
There was a high risk of fall protection that was happening because this was one of those train bridges without guardrails. The gaps between the tracks are ginormous.
It's probably like the #1 OSHA violation.
Yeah, and that's honestly the first thing they say is
usually
fall
on
hazards.
roofs. It's like someone's going up on a roof to like replace like a few shingles. They don't have to set like the full protection. But like on a bridge, on a train track, like,
And
they're
they're
very high off the
without
ground.
getting clearance to like stop the trains. Like
Yeah.
nothing
That's
can
too
go
many.
right on train bridges. Has no one been watching actors?
Yeah, that's true.
Anastasia. It's never going to
Yeah.
go right.
They also are getting fined for almost $5,000. It's so funny. And they're also getting fined for almost $5,000, and the maximum fine you can have for fall hazard is $7,000. So like they're on like the upper end of the scale.
Yeah, but I'm
It's
actually
unacceptable.
genuinely surprised that it's not higher. I mean, it probably has to do with a degree of neglect and of unknowing neglect, which has to do with it. But like, someone that knows, like, there is no fall protection. We should not be here. We're gonna do it anyway. Like screw OSHA, whatever that. That's probably a higher penalty. But still, like,
So
It's
it's
like-
there's a matter of like you're putting someone's life at risk.
yeah, that's only a little bit higher than like half of the total fine, which is confusing because like, how do you get worse than that when it comes to fall protection?
Also, there was no escape plan for everyone to get out safely with all their equipment.
Yeah,
Which
she
I
got
They
the
would have thought of that.
girl who died. She got caught between, or she was off the side of the track, and then the train hit the bed hit her, and she like
But like,
whatever happened.
probably from a legal standpoint, and like, I don't really know, but I feel like it would hurt them more if they actually had an escape plan, because having an escape plan sort of admits that you know someone could go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, they literally didn't.
But at the same time, it's another step of neglect by not having one.
Exactly.
And flat out idiocy.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing, I believe, is fairly idiotic.
Yeah, because if you're being like, oh, nothing's gonna go wrong, something's gonna go wrong.
Yeah.
Like, it's your job as an employer to make sure your employees aren't gonna die when a train comes through.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So the next article is California takes on the NFL. New bill would force teams to pay cheerleaders minimum wage. It's by Kay McDonough and it's from Salon.com, and it talks about how a congresswoman, I believe, is pushing to get cheerleaders to be paid minimum wage. As of right now, they are typically being paid $5 an hour, and she wants to bump it up to $9 an hour.
I don't understand. Like, yes, they're qualifying it as volunteer, but I still don't understand how it makes sense to
I don't get
like
how
an industry that is like so public as
They
make
make
so much money.
Well, the NFL
Yeah.
is also so screwed up. Like they,
What do you
it's
mean?
in how they pay people.
Mm-hmm. What's on the NFL that pays them?
No, yeah, because there's a lot of
Yeah,
people
I mean-
covering up.
I know that like stadium workers work on the ground screw. I don't know if you knew that. Stadium workers like don't make a lot. Like I was a volunteer for like the time I was working, and like the people that I was working with were making $8.50 an hour, and that's just like people that are making $8.50 an hour to like rake the dirt that.
I heard your wonderful voice.
We're filming.
We're filming for class.
Damn it, Chris. Like the people who are raking the grass or like raking the dirt that someone that's making like $10 million a year is playing on is making $8.50 an hour. Like
Yeah,
that's
the athletes that are playing here are making so much money. Like
yeah.
I don't understand how like they can get away with paying.
And
They're
cheerleaders are
cheerleaders,
athletes.
yeah.
Oh my god, and it's so dangerous.
Yeah, like how do they get away with paying their cheerleaders so less, their ground crew so
Oh,
less, little, if they're paying their athletes so goddamn much.
Yeah.
And the thing that you have to consider is that cheerleaders are athletes. They get hurt. They you can get so badly injured. Cheerleaders.
Yeah,
she ran as a cheerleader and like she broke her neck.
Yeah.
And she's still alive.
They don't even show the cheerleaders on television like doing crazy stuff either.
Yeah,
So,
they just
like-
show them
So like a lot of people just think cheerleaders are paid to stand there and shake pom poms, and that's kind of what in public justification would be an opinion. Like, oh yeah, like that's not worth like so much money a year. Like you just stand there. But when
But it's
they're
a
not
huge time.
filming them, they're doing like crazy stunts, and there's so much rehearsal time and everything like
and they're
that.
held to a ridiculous standard of body type.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're, like if they gain any weight, they're fined. People can get kicked off for
Are they
like
fine?
yeah. Like, and you know if you're not getting paid that much anyway, that's
devastating.
How can you fine a volunteer? Oh no, you totally can fine a
No,
volunteer.
they still sign a contract.
Yeah, they're still
Yeah.
contracted.
That's the thing though, like, you're under contract, you can be fined, you're held to this ridiculous standard, but you're not getting paid.
And if you miss anything, they
You're doing the minimum wage.
There's also a great statistic in this article that says, according to MIT's living wage calculator, $11.20 an hour will
Yeah.
cover the very basics for a single adult with no children.
120.
And right now, without this minimum wage bump up, they are being paid less than half of what they need if they were living by themselves. And of course, they're cheerleaders. They have families, and they're like maybe like live a higher life, but they're
It's
still
like
being paid
extremely
no
unlikely
money.
that every single one would not have a family.
Exactly.
And I'm
Like that's impossible.
and like it actually. I wonder where they got that statistic from. Because I'm not saying it's wrong. Because I'm sure
It's
it
from
is.
MIT,
Right.
Massachusetts Institute of Technology.
Oh, like MIT.
MIT.
Sorry. But so wow, I'm gonna sound terrible saying this, but like there are people that make minimum wage that live and like
It's
But
they
it's-
struggle.
It's a
with it.
standard
yeah, no,
of
sure,
living that you
sure.
have to be aware of.
Yeah.
Like, I know Seattle is moving their minimum wage up to $10 because you cannot live in the city of Seattle on what the current minimum wage is.
Exactly.
So they have to raise it.
Also, they live a traveling lifestyle. With,
Yeah,
like,
which is even
sports
harder.
teams.
do they don't travel with the team?
Yeah, they do.
The cheerleaders.
and they're still not paid.
How
Wait, the
does
cheerleaders travel with.
how does it be at other people's halftime shows?
No,
Cheering on their team.
They don't just stay in the stadium and cheer. What do they
Yeah.
cheer for when the Seahawks are traveling?
they don't. No, like I'm actually pretty sure. Didn't it say somewhere? I'm pretty sure cheerleaders, like except for the Super Bowl, like
Well,
Whenever I go to
Super
Ravens
Bowl, they're
games-
traveling.
whenever I go to Ravens games,
Well,
I
like-
never see like there aren't cheerleaders from the other team.
Maybe it's just the Super
No,
Bowl.
it's definitely not.
Oh
What do you
no,
know?
they rarely travel.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, never mind. Okay.
I mean, you should. I don't know.
Move on.
I don't think a lot of us go to one.
I do.
I watched
Oh,
the
alright,
series. That's it.
Alright, the next article is Making Talent, 4 Lessons from the Front Lines of the Digital Education, and it's by Allison Kent Smith, and it's from fastcocreate.com. And it talks about how a lot of high-paid professionals are older and don't have digital experience, but lie on their resumes and like claim to have the digital capabilities that they need for their jobs in the new digital age.